I am here because African American migration narratives run through my veins. I am the grandchild and child of migrants. My mother's side of the family left a small Virginia town called Martinsville and settled in Washington, D.C. in 1950. My grandfather, a barber, and my grandmother, a seamstress, believed the nation's capital would offer them and their 4 children new opportunities, new possibilities. As a child, I often wondered what would possess them, cause them to pack up their lives and move someplace new. What propelled them? Why Washington? And how did they acquire such audacity? Migration is often thought of as physical movement from one geographical locale to another, but I believe it is more complex than that. Migration is a process that unfolds over time. Imagining the new terrain, navigating the landscape, these are all essential parts of the migration process. In a house largely filled with women, my grandmother, mother, and aunts served as the principal storytellers. Their stories inform my research, my artistry, my sensibilities. It is through these Black women that I've learned about the pain, the beauty, the humor, the injustices, and the contradictions of migration for African Americans. I must tell you, when the Washington Metro system opened in the nation's capital in 1976, my grandmother and mother took my brother, sister, and me to experience this modern wonder in our city. I remember looking up and seeing these concrete art ceilings over us as we rode these steep escalators down to these terracotta tiled platforms. I was in awe as these shiny trains carried thousands of passengers to their various destinations. These women, these Black female migrants, gave me access to a world and showed me that even at age 6, I belonged in a world so vast, so complex, so filled with possibilities. But the enormous possibilities of this modern city also clashed against the harsh realities experienced by African Americans. When my family arrived in 1950, they quickly learned where Blacks could and could not go in the capital city. The women in my family told us often and matter-of-factly that Blacks were barred from trying on any clothing in the downtown department store called Garfinkel's. I often associated the Garfinkel's narrative with their migration narrative. For instance, my late grandmother was a meticulous seamstress who adored the cut of a well-made suit. She would lift a dress to inspect the finishing of the seams in hem. I imagine that if she tried on an A-line skirt in Garfinkel's, she would have done this to scrutinize the craftsmanship against her own frame. But despite her search for new possibilities, her movement was rendered suspicious. It was policed. Not to have a home, a refuge, the space to move freely in this society is demoralizing and dehumanizing. To deny my grandmother of the freedom to smell the textiles in Garfinkel's, the freedom to move freely, was to deny her of freedom, was to deny her of her search for home, her search for place in the capital city, her search for place in her own country. Much of my research over the years, particularly my book, Staging Migrations Toward an American West, from Ida B. Wells to Rhodessa Jones, is about Black women who use migration to search for possibilities. Una Chadahuri says, who one is and how one can be are a function of where one is and how one experiences that place. I ask, how have Black women used migration to survive in the world, particularly in the United States? How have they used it to be free and to assert their place in this society? If migration is a process, like I claim, then I must also consider those events or people that inspired Black women's movement. For example, in the early 1940s, Black female migrants left these close working class families in places like Texas, Oklahoma, and Louisiana by bus, train, and car, and they joined the World War II defense industry. On the home front, during these war years, skilled and unskilled jobs opened up to women, like the late Ollie Hawkins, a welder, a skilled worker in the Kaiser shipyards in Richmond, California. When I first met Ms. Hawkins, she lived in this little yellow house in Berkeley, California. And throughout my time with Ms. Hawkins, it became crystal clear to me that socio-political freedom was central to her life before, during, and after World War II. The defense industry enticed Black female migrants like Ms. Hawkins, who feared being confined by the servitude that socially and economically trapped their mothers and grandmothers. Ms. Hawkins once told me, my mother used to go to the back door, you know, go into those white people's houses to work. One day she sent me to work in her place. She was sick, I went, rang the doorbell, and this woman come to the door and told me to go to the back door. Now, I'm at the front door. She could have asked me to come in and maybe next time say, well, Ollie, next time go to the back door. But she shut the door. And when she shut the door and left me out there, I just turned around and went on home. And then she got in her car and came to my mother's house and said, well, Addie, I told Ollie to go to the back door, and when I went there, she wasn't there. And my mother said, now my children don't go to the back door. I go to the back door. Well, Addie, you need to take Ollie out of school. And my mother got real mad. You need to take her out of school and put her in one of these white women's kitchens. And my mother said, that's just the reason I'm sending her to school, so she doesn't go to white people's kitchens. They got mad at my mother for that, but she was a strong fighter. And I learned how to stand up for my rights from her. I don't go to no back doors, girl, no. Don't go to the back of the bus. Ms. Hawkins, early on, the words about freedom came out of Ms. Hawkins' family, who nurtured her imagination and realization about migration. The white female employer suggested that schooling made Ms. Hawkins subversive. But rather than nurture her daughter to look at back doors, her mother trained her to move beyond the mentality of domestic service. These early comments also prepared Ms. Hawkins to see herself in a geographical locale where she might discover new opportunities, new possibilities. Instead of depicting her mother as disadvantaged, Ms. Hawkins believed that her mother shaped her consciousness about belonging and positions in American society. Her mother shaped her worldview long before Ms. Hawkins ever headed to Northern California. Ms. Hawkins showed me that Black women have acted as agents of change throughout their quest for freedom. she also continues to teach me that we should reevaluate the ways that we define migration. Brown Girl in the Ring, which originated in the Caribbean, is a follow the leader game taught to me by my mother-in-law. It begins with everyone forming a ring around this leader and singing, "There's a brown girl in the ring, tra-la-la-la-la, and she's sweet like the sugar in the plum, plum, plum." Then everyone mimics the leader's movements as they sing, "Now show me your motion, tra-la-la-la-la, and she's sweet like the sugar in the plum, plum, plum." Once this round of the game is completed, the leader selects a follower to become the brown girl in the ring, and the game continues. While all are invited to join in this Caribbean circle game, irrespective of national identity, race, gender, or age, the title of the game suggests that a brown girl is expected to take center stage in this ritual of play. She is expected to set the tone for the circle and is therefore very much important for this circle. In the middle of the circle, she has power. If the followers impress the brown girl with their movements, then any of the followers may be selected to become the brown girl. I liken this game to seizing the mic, having a place at the table. One summer afternoon, when my daughter was 4 years old, we ventured out to the Dance Africa Bazaar in Brooklyn. It had been a long day of face painting and shopping, and we were heading home, but we were drawn to the sounds of drumming and this group of people that gathered on the corner. We made our way to the inner edges of the crowd where these exuberant musicians and dancers were attempting to get spectators to join them in the middle of the circle. But the spectators were content being mere spectators. Suddenly I saw my child, without a second thought, enter the center of the circle. And my first instinct was to pull her back. But before I could react, she was spontaneously dancing with a woman whom neither one of us had ever seen before. As others watched, my daughter was not intimidated by the crowd that gazed upon her with amusement. She decided that she was going to be the brown girl in the ring and didn't even wait for anyone to invite her. I was humbled by her audacity to imagine her place within the circle. My daughter is my muse because she inspires me to question how Black women and girls navigate this landscape. And through it all, she and I continue to benefit from the imagining of our womenkin, and even Ms. Hawkins and her mother. I am certain through the act of migration, human beings affirm their identities, affirm their trajectories. They move to flee war and chaos. They move to find housing, food, and education. They move to find a place within the circle. I do not know what awaits my daughter as she makes her way through this world, but I do hope the power of possibilities runs through her veins. And if the landscape attempts to bar her entrance, and claims that there is no room for her in the circle, I hope that she will forge ahead. I hope that in her quest for a home, a place, that she will welcome others with humanity and an integrity and courage. I hope that she will rely upon those four-mother migrants, like my grandmother and Ms. Hawkins, who moved to survive, not just for themselves, but for their communities. Thank you.